Welcome back to the War of Ideas podcast. I wasn't planning on making a third episode in a row about the same general idea that branched into different specifics, but I changed my mind. I found that this is a topic that greatly interests me and isn't being covered enough by others, and I feel like I have more to say about it than what's widely available to people, where sort of I know a little more about it than I do about politics or economics. And on top of that, I don't think there are enough people talking about this to begin with. This podcast may become about social media and advertising and tech and its effects on people. That may be the direction we go from here on out. Of course, I feel like I'm free to talk about any topic, and I am, but I feel like getting into a specific niche would be better than doing general topics that might not retain anyone for more than the one episode that they're interested in. Let this serve as a notice that future episodes will most likely be geared towards social media effects, technology effects, the future of social media, addiction, advertising. So for the people who are interested in more episodes like the last two, number 19 and 20, there's going to be more where that came from. And for the people who are not as interested in that sort of thing, I wish you luck in finding a podcast more suited to your interests. And the biggest reason this topic is so important to me is because I want to help serve a continuous reminder that our attention is one of the most precious things we have, and that the best way to safeguard your attention, to reserve it for the things you really want, is to be aware of the methods that are used to grab our attention. Once you're aware, once you see how the sausage gets made, hopefully it will reveal something to you that you won't forget about. You'll see the dark side of how these things work. You'll look at features like infinite scrolling and think of how much more time that has caused people to stay on their phones than they intended to. Maybe sometimes you'll think about it when you're doing the scrolling yourself, and that helps. Before learning about any of this stuff, most people just scroll and scroll. They don't think of these things as intentional features put in there by the engineers who work at Google and Facebook. But if you come to think of these things as intentional features, you're more likely to notice them when you're using social media yourself. So, learning how the sausage gets made is, in my opinion, the best way to foster a healthier relationship to social media. And not just social media, but any product or service in general. Try to view it from the business owner's perspective. What do they want to get out of you? What do they want from you? And what practices are they employing to get you where they want you? To get you interested? Sometimes just stopping and thinking is enough. Enough so that you don't spend any more time doing something you didn't want to. And before I go any further, I want to stress that I think social media is an amazing tool and can connect us in a good way and make us very happy. and feel fulfilled. It just depends on how we use it. Here's a quote I like from Jenny Odell, who is the author of the book How to Do Nothing, Resisting the Attention Economy. And she says, "The villain here is not necessarily the internet or even the idea of social media. It is the invasive logic of commercial social media and its financial incentive to keep us in a profitable state of anxiety, envy, and distraction. It is furthermore the cult of individuality and personal branding that grow out of such platforms and affect the way we think about our offline selves." End quote. And I've said it before, but I want to keep reminding people who are listening to this and listen to me cast such a dark shadow over all these tech companies. These are amazing tools and services that can help us live a better life. They can help us connect with more friends than we ever thought possible. They can help us reconnect with old friends that we would have never spoken to again if it wasn't for places like Facebook or Twitter. It can help us connect with journalists or economists or actresses and actors, you name it, and allow us to have actual interactions with them. Wholesome interactions, terrible interactions, but interactions nonetheless. I followed one of the people running for Congress in my city on Twitter, and they followed me back and they were excited to hear that I was interested in voting for them, and it was a very wholesome interaction. So it's not like I think these things should be destroyed. Not even close. It's just we need to come at them from the right angle, and we need to encourage the engineers who work on these products to pump the brakes a little and implement changes that are better for the human and not better for capturing our attention. Those two things are not synonymous with one another. They do not always coincide with one another. What's good for one is not always good for the other. Anyway, I've talked a lot about social media in the last 2 episodes, and for this one, I want to focus on marketing, advertising. Not just talk about ads are annoying and ads are bad, but how things are marketed, what direction marketing is going in, how businesses view marketing, how companies like Google help other companies with their marketing, and I'll also talk about the meaning that we look for in life and how our minds have been changed over time to derive meaning, or at least get a dopamine hit from buying things, and how our sense of self-worth gets warped by the stuff we have, and just my 2 cents on what I think about that. And as I said a few minutes ago, the more we are aware of what these companies are trying to do, not just the engineers at Google, but the people who work in advertising for Coca-Cola or McDonald's or you name it, just to be aware of what's actually happening when you listen or see those advertisements. And if you can just not be lost in thought when you're listening to those ads, you can make better decisions, more informed decisions. You can think to yourself, do I really need this? Is this really going to make me happy? What would I use this for? So just as the big tech algorithms have captured our attention and changed the way our society sees the world, These same big tech companies are changing the game of marketing and advertising. And you don't have to trust my word for it. Google shows off how much more profitable they can make other businesses. I wouldn't say the strategy of advertising has changed that much since the days of old where you see something in a newspaper or you see it on TV and it reminds you that you want something to eat or you want to go to a theme park. The one thing that is happening though is it's getting more effective. And there are more effective ways of advertising when it comes to a computer screen or your phone screen, something that you can interact with immediately. If you see something on TV and you want to buy that product, you have to make a phone call or you have to go on a computer or your phone and you have to look it up. If you're already on your phone, the distance between you seeing the ad and you purchasing the item is extremely small, and that makes a big difference. It's all about framing and advertising the product, not actually about how good your product is. Your product being good is just the baseline. Imagine how many companies have more employees in their marketing and advertising department compared to the employees that actually create the product. It's become all about your image, all about what you can make people believe. Buying fake ratings on Amazon or Yelp, putting up that facade. And even if you know that's wrong, even if you don't want to do it, because it feels like you're tricking people. If you're a company CEO or business owner, you have no choice but to go toe-to-toe with other companies and resort to the same tactics as everyone else, or you will fall behind. You'll fall behind because you don't take advantage of human beings' blind spots. And if you don't do it, someone else will. I read an article earlier this year by Molly Young, and I want to read a quote from her article. In the article, she says, she saw a small foil packet with a plaid design on her coworker's desk. The front of the plaid packet said, "Up-tapped, all natural energy." The marketing copy said, "For too long, athletic nutrition has been sweetened with cheap synthetic sugars. The simplicity of endurance sports deserves a simple ingredient, 100% pure, unadulterated organic Vermont maple syrup, the all-natural, low glycemic index sports fuel." It was a packet of maple syrup, nothing more. Whenever I hear a word like operationalize or touch point, I think of that packet, of some anonymous individual, probably with a Stanford degree and a net worth many multiples of my own, funneling maple syrup into tubelets and calling it low glycemic index sports fuel. It's not a crime to try to convince people that their favorite pancake accessory is a viable biohack. But the words have a scammy flavor, and that's the closest I can come to a definition of garbage language that accounts for its eternal mutability. Words with a scammy flavor. As with any scam, the effectiveness lies in the delivery. Thousands of companies have tricked us into believing that a mattress or lip gloss order is an ideological position. End quote. I just found that to be a good example of what our advertising looks like these days. And I'm glad I'm not the only one who sees things this way. I will link the article in the description of the episode. It's actually not so much about advertising, but more about the language of corporate speak, how people interact with one another in the office world, and the language they use when talking about their projects. And she's right about the Stanford degree. The people who made Facebook, these are all extremely smart and dedicated people, and they're spending their time convincing you to buy a packet of maple syrup by packaging it as something better, by framing it as something better. And another way to think about this is all this framing is comparable to what Trump tries to do. If you're familiar with him, our former president, to him, image is the only thing that matters. Framing is the only thing that matters, not actual function, not facts. And if the image is good, and if people believe, people will pay. They paid for Trump steaks, and they paid for Trump University, and a whole list of other things. Any baseball fans? Over the past few years, framing has become a huge deal for catchers, to the point where even if you can't hit the baseball and you have mediocre defense, if you can frame the ball well, that's a huge advantage. And I love that they call it framing. It's such a good word to describe this. If you're unfamiliar with framing in baseball, that's when the catcher, when the pitch comes into his glove and the umpire has to decide whether to call it a strike or a ball, so the catcher tries to make the pitch look as close to a strike as possible. They try to drag their glove towards the center of the strike zone to make it more likely that the umpire calls a strike. Let's talk about what companies like Google do and what they offer to other businesses. Google helps other businesses sell more products without showing more ads. And this is all on Google Analytics homepage. You can go to analytics.google.com and they show off how much they can help businesses sell their products. They have quotes from businesses with glowing reviews. One that I saw a while back said, "Google's analytics products helped us improve engagement by 33% and click-throughs by 21% for content promotions on our homepage." There's another website I came across that tries to do the same thing as Google, but instead of leaning more on the technology side of things and the software engineering side of things, they market themselves to other businesses by saying, whether it's managing a new project or a client relationship or improving sales closings, you will learn skills that transcend culture by focusing on human nature and a unique fit within your environment. Learn essential skills and uncover valuable pieces of information to help you navigate the best deal possible. Adapted from the hostage negotiation world, what you'll learn you can't get anywhere else. Clients on average are 20% more effective in their negotiations after our training. What does 20% more revenue look like for your business? So this company that I will not name is glorifying their negotiation skills that they can teach you to negotiate with their customers, with their clients for 20% more revenue. Does that sound very the customer comes first to you? Just think about that for a moment. Companies, with the help of Google Analytics or any other analytics and data tracking utilities, can not only help you create more engagement for your ad revenue, like I talked about in the last 2 episodes, where Facebook and Twitter are attention-grabbing machines just to serve us ads, but these analytics can also help companies to sell more of their product without ads. The ads are just one part of the equation. When you run out of ways to reinvent the wheel and improve upon your product, the only thing you have left to increase your sales is your ability to convince people that your product is worth buying. And that is what Google sells. Google is saying, not only am I a good way to get your ads out there and seen by other people, but I can also help you tailor your ads. I know what advertisements work the best. I know what websites work the best. I know what designs work the best to get people to buy things. It's the whole package. It's not just giving you all the eyeballs. It's teaching you how to convert those eyeballs into sales. Here's an example of how Google Analytics helps increase engagement by, 33%? With these analytics, they can help other companies realize, wow, if we place the buy button on our website 5 pixels to the right, or changed its color, or didn't have this link to a new web page go blank for a second, but instead slowly load everything over time in a cascade instead, so less people close the browser because of loss of attention, we can get more people to buy the same exact product that we were selling before. We just have to fine-tune our website for maximum attention grabbing, and we can figure out what formula is the best to sell the most product down to every pixel on our website or our app. You'd be amazed how much of a difference infinite scrolling makes, how much of a difference the buy button makes and where it is on the screen and what the website design is like. And Google can play innocent. They can be like, who, me? I'm just letting companies see data. I don't tell them what to do with it. I tell them what's possible with our data, what others have been able to do with our data, but I don't tell them explicitly that manipulating users based on their habits is a good thing. I don't have a stance, I just offer the services. But they enshrine the 33% more engagement quote on their homepage. This is what they expect to be done with their analytics. They are complicit. They are the reason this is happening. There aren't that many companies offering the level of analytics that Google offers. At least not yet. If you think about it, Google is making money helping turn other businesses into algorithmic addiction machines, just like YouTube and just like Facebook have become. They sell the addictive capabilities of the most successfully addictive companies that have ever existed. That's what Google Analytics is all about. That's why it's so valuable. Facebook and Google are two of the most highly valued companies on planet Earth, and they're offering a slice of that addictiveness that got them where they are. They're offering that possibility to other businesses so that every business can become the next Google, the next Facebook, or at least they can become just as addicting as the next Google and the next Facebook. Imagine a world where every website you visit and every app you use is implementing features as addictive as the ones found in Facebook, Snapchat, and YouTube. Businesses that make money from serving other businesses, not individual users, give us a deep insight into what businesses are looking for these days. And as an example of that, I think I played it twice in 2 different episodes because I find it so important, where I played a clip of Jaron Lanier talking about what the executives of Facebook talk about to advertising executives of other companies. That's if you listen in on that conversation is where you would find out exactly where Facebook's interest lies. It's survival of the fittest business out there, and no stone has been left unturned in order to scrape every last dollar possible by any means necessary. It's not enough to just improve the product anymore, so we look elsewhere. We have to frame it better, negotiate better, use human psychology better, and the arms race is now heading towards the brain, towards capitalizing on our neurotransmitters. Some of us are already amazed at how much Facebook knows about us, just by the messages we type and the posts we look at. But how much will they know about us when they are able to find the right text or the right picture that causes our dopamine receptors to light up? And if you want to get even more dystopian, maybe they'll be looking for the picture that spikes your cortisol levels. I think the key question we need to think about for the present day is, where do you draw the line between a better user experience and taking advantage of human attention habits? You can argue that keeping someone on your website longer means you're making the user experience better, because, well, how else would you measure user experience? If they spend lots of time, that means they must like it. If they don't spend as much time on it, it means they don't like it as much. That is how the algorithms think. But that logic can be misleading. What about car crashes? We don't want to see car crashes when we're driving on the highway, but we can't help but look at it. So for things like that, where we don't want to see it or we don't want it to happen, but when it does happen, we can't take our eyes away. Another example would be forest fires, watching California burn on live television. There's just something astonishing about watching it happen. The algorithm thinks, oh good, you must like this stuff. Let's show you more of this stuff. So, when our screen time is tracked, it cannot tell whether an increase in screen time is spent due to an unwanted addiction or due to a genuine interest in a product. That may change though. Biometric data can change the game. Real-time heart rate and neurotransmitter tracking would be able to measure our happiness, sadness, stress, you name it. And companies like Apple and Google will decide whether they want to continue to fuel people's addictions knowingly, or whether they want to encourage more healthy use of their users. If they have heart rate and cortisol levels and dopamine levels in real time, which may be a long way away, but you never know. If they have this data, they can't even pretend to have plausible deniability when it comes to knowing whether their services are making people depressed or getting people addicted. They're going to see the spike in cortisol levels when you see a post on Twitter you don't like, and they're going to say, should we continue fueling this? We don't have to. We have a choice. So if you think social media addiction is effective now, wait until you see the rise of biometric data integration. But there's also an upside to it. Imagine if your doctor was given this data when you came in for a visit. Imagine how many more correct diagnoses could be given if a doctor knew that your heart rate was spiking for a certain reason. If Google could tell your doctor which pictures were causing you stress, which posts were causing you stress, and could recommend what to do about that and help you with an addiction problem or a depression problem and help you get through it. And it would also solve the problem that the algorithm currently has of thinking back to the example of the car crash. The algorithm would know, once it gets enough data collected, that just because you viewed something and you view it every time it comes across your feed and you click into it and you read the comments, just because you viewed it doesn't necessarily mean that you want to see more of it, because that's what it does right now. If it was able to get your cortisol levels and your heart rate in real time, it would be able to tell the difference between the posts you truly enjoy and the posts that you doom scroll, posts that you engage in because you just can't look away. So it's not all dystopia. It's up to Google. It's up to governments holding Google accountable. It's up to these tech companies to take a stand. It's up to the people who work for them to implement these features. Okay, so after trying to explain how today's marketing is evolving with all the analytics pointed at our brains, I hope you see it in a different light and try to be more aware of what's gone on behind the scenes when you see an ad, when you're online shopping, when you're doom scrolling on Twitter. Even if they're rare, reminders you give yourself will help foster a healthier use of social media and a better attitude towards advertising. Even if those reminders only happen 1 out of 100 times that you pick up your phone, they will still help shape a healthier long-term outlook. I want to share a little bit of something that I read a while back from a person named Thomas Wells. I'm going to read some parts of it that share how advertisements and marketing change our life, and I hope it encourages you to decouple your sense of happiness from your ability to buy things. Okay, in his essay, he says, most people, most of the time, have a very weak sense of what it is exactly that we want, and how much we want it. We want to be loved, to accomplish admirable things, to be independent of the whims of others, and so on. But we give relatively little thought to what specific goals follow from these desires, or their overall coherence. That is because we generally do not know how to reflect on what we want, or simply do not bother to. This is where advertising and marketing comes in as a shaper as well as a driver of consumption. Just as we seek to become more efficient consumers by buying things that require less effort to convert into the goods we really want, like pre-chopped onions, no iron shirts, and so on, so we turn to the companies that produce these goods and services for advice about what we should want in the first place. In economic life, our practical reasoning about what we want is often outsourced to the producers. Mainstream economics asserts that consumers have preferences and producers compete to meet our desires. But that relationship is reversed where consumer preferences are induced by the producers themselves. If you let companies like Apple tell you what you want in life, then even though you get your paycheck from somewhere else, you are in effect working for Apple rather than yourself. That's why more of this kind of consumption doesn't make us happier. it doesn't actually take us closer to where we really want to be. What this approach to consumption does achieve is to distract us by pulling us towards commodities, things that are easily priced and marketed at the expense of the other valuable things in life, such as friendships, conversation, sunsets, or art. People looking back on their lives rarely see the stuff they bought as what really mattered. They often appreciate the time they spent being present and attentive to others. End quote. I did my best to try and pick out the bits and pieces that related to the rest of this episode. What I conclude from reading that is take the time to really think about what you want. Take the time to decide why you want something. Don't let others make the decision for you. It's okay to be persuaded, but don't be manipulated. I'm not against splurging. I'm not anti-consumption. I just want people to be sure that the things they are doing and buying are making them truly happy, and that their concept of happiness isn't created by someone other than themselves. If you don't think hard enough about what you really want, outside influences can and will make up your mind for you. I want to quote Jenny Odell again, the person I quoted at the beginning of the episode. In her book, How to Do Nothing, she quotes Seneca, a Roman philosopher. In his essay on the shortness of life, he describes the horror of looking back to see that life has slipped between our fingers. Look back in memory and consider, how many have robbed you of life when you were not aware of what you were losing? How much was taken up in useless sorrow, in foolish joy, in greedy desire, in the allurements of society? How little of yourself was left to you? She says, the happiest, most fulfilled moments of my life have been when I was completely aware of being alive, with all the hope, pain, and sorrow that it entails. Okay, this may seem like a sharp subject turn, but trust me, it's not. For anyone who is a fan of the TV show The Office, or even if you aren't, you may have heard this quote from a character on the show. His name is Andy Bernard, and he says in the season finale, I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them. And I know a lot of people love that quote, and I do too. But I always thought to myself, there is a way. There is a way to know when you're in the good old days. But in order to do it, you have to stop and pay attention. You have to not be lost in thought all the time. You have to reflect. You have to ask yourself the question, am I in the good old days? Are your parents alive? Are your siblings alive? Have you spoken to them recently? Has anyone in your family died from COVID? Are you able to get a good night's sleep? Do you have enough free time to enjoy your favorite shows? Is there a hobby you like doing that you're able to actually do every day? Has your life been unremarkable in the past 6 months? There will come a day where you do something for the last time, and you might not know when that day is. So, appreciate what you have now. These may very well be your good old days. All it takes to realize that is to step back and think about it. Most of us never do that. We don't do that unless we're catapulted there. Unless we listen to our favorite TV show and someone there mentions it. Or we listen to a podcast and someone there mentions it. It rarely comes to us without prodding, without something else sparking it. Very much unlike the way our phone prompts us with a buzz, with a notification. So I'm hoping listening to this will spark it for you, will light the match. So think to yourself, compared to what I think lies in my future, and knowing how much I fawn over past memories, am I living in the good old days right now? Are these the good old days? I think most of us will find that our answer is yes. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.